I'm Jaden Jefferson, currently joined by former Ohio Democratic Party Chair David Pepper. Thanks for joining me. I know there's a lot to get into, but I just want to start on the state level because these are the grounds you know best, which
Right.
happens here in state politics. But currently, Ohio has this race for governor happening. Vivek Ramaswamy running as a Republican, and you have Dr. Amy Acton running on the Democratic side. As a former party chair, what is your reaction to how the campaigns are going thus far?
It's obvious that Vivek Ramaswamy has a lot of money. I've seen that, but I also think he could also be a problematic candidate for them. The party 10 years ago, for example, if former Ohio State coach Jim Tressel had wanted to run for governor, the Republican Party would have done anything in their power to make sure he was the candidate. Because I think he would have had the ability to win over the broad center of the state in addition to the Republican Party. And I think when they go all in on Vivek Ramaswamy, which they've done, the party already endorsed him. They sort of rejected Jim Tressel as a candidate, and now he's raising a lot of money. I actually think they risk going so far to the right that they leave a lot of the lane open in the middle for the Democrat. In this case, the candidate is Amy Acton, who stood with Mike DeWine during COVID, earned a lot of respect, but also is very impressive beyond that. I think that the two of them, I think Vivek is so far to the right, and he went way to the right in the Republican primary. He's already doing that now. I think that opens a wide lane for someone who's viewed as less political, less partisan. That's sort of Amy Acton's brand. I think that leaves a lot of room in the middle for someone to win the race when lately Democrats have struggled to win the race. So I think she has a real advantage because she isn't viewed as a politician. I think polling so far has sort of shown that. She's either been viable against Ramaswamy or ahead of him in the polling. And I think it's because people in Ohio just view her as not political, as someone they trust to look out for them. And whether it's Vivek or someone else, having rejected Jim Tressel, who is also sort of not viewed as a politician, I actually think that matchup is potentially the best chance Democrats have had in a long time. If you had a situation also where you had her running for governor and let's say Sherrod Brown running against John Huston for Senate, I think you have the makings of maybe the best ticket since 2006. There's a long way between now and November of 26, but it's a midterm of an unpopular Republican president. You could have a very good ticket, hopefully in the near future, and all of a sudden, I think that matchup is potentially a very good one.
And I'm not sure how much you're privy to in terms of the conversations happening behind the scenes, but would you say the party has done enough work to actually get Dr. Acton out there? Because name recognition is something that she comes with. I mean, people do know her from the COVID-19
Right.
pandemic and seeing her on TV a lot, but would you say that she's done enough to establish herself as a
I mean, so one of so her advantage is she's starting with not being viewed politically, and she's known. That's very rare. Who was like that? Mark Kelly, the current senator from Arizona, someone who got well known through something beyond politics. That's how John Glenn had his start. The hard part about that is it means politically you're starting from scratch. So when you start a campaign having done no politics before, it's great that you're well known, but it also means you have some early work to do just to open the campaign committee, to start raising money, to figure out who you hire. So she's had to do that. But I will say, if you look recently, Northwest Ohio, Northeast Ohio, Southern Ohio, she has been out a lot. If you went to her Twitter site, you'd see that. So she is out a lot. Here's the thing, and I can say this as a former party chair. Um, as a party early on in primaries, your job is not really to do too much touting of a candidate because you don't know who else may run. You haven't officially endorsed yet. So early in a campaign, like right now, the new chair of the party, Kathleen Clyde, who I think will be a great chair, she's got to get the party running well. She's got to raise money to get the party's operation together. So early in campaigns like this, it's usually more on the candidate to do the heavy lift. And especially when you have a transition in party leadership, Kathleen Clyde's job is more to get the party right sized and running well. And then down the road, it becomes more clear that there's and by the way, the other thing Kathleen Clyde's got to do is make sure to recruit for the rest of the ticket. We have a governor candidate. We don't have a Senate candidate. There is a Secretary of State candidate, but I haven't heard anyone else announce for anything else. So Kathleen Clyde's other job is, if I were her, I'd be excited that Amy's running because I think it's a unique opportunity. But she's also got a lot of work to do. It's July to make sure the rest of that ticket fills out, whether it be, it's the Senate race, auditor, these positions. Everyone's mad about gerrymandering. Well, the way you can end gerrymandering is you win the governor, secretary of state, and auditor race, and you can end gerrymandering. So there's a lot of work to do there. And so the prime job right now would not be to tout the one candidate running for governor. You partner together, but there's also a lot of other work that chair needs to do.
Well, and you mentioned there's the Senate race also, and there was another establishment Democrat name that you threw out there, Sherrod Brown. I know there was this photo circulating of a meeting between former Senator Sherrod Brown and Senator Chuck Schumer about a potential Senate run. Have you heard anything about that? And why do you think he's performing so well? Because there's polling that shows in terms of candidates who Ohio Democrats would prefer for governor, he's far ahead of a lot of other names.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm not an insider, so I didn't know about that meeting really until the photo was showed up. And it was kind of funny. The curtains were open, so people could
Maybe
see
they
it.
wanted us to see that.
I don't know. The thing was a little bit odd. I'm not suggesting anything negative, just so everyone knew about that meeting. I think that the DSCC. So look what's happening around the country right now. The incumbent senator from North Carolina has just said he won't run again. That creates a real opportunity to flip North Carolina if their former governor runs. You've got the biggest names that could have run against John Ossoff not running. You've got Joni Ernst in Iowa saying people just die. Remember that? Around Medicaid. You've got Susan Collins having played a role in advancing this terrible Medicaid bill. And you have John Husted having been for all this not the Medicaid bill, but the entire budget bill. You have John Husted being all in on all of it. And I think the impacts, not only is the bill already really unpopular, but going forward, if when the Medicaid cuts kick in, or when these tax breaks kick in, or when we lose jobs, and we had a bad jobs report today, I think John Husted, who never got all that well known in the prior jobs and has the first energy scandal to talk about, ECOT, I think all of a sudden you add all those seats up, and I think the Senate's going to be in play. But it will only be in play if we can win Ohio. And if that's all true, and I think it is, that's why Chuck Schumer was in Columbus having that dinner.
I do wonder, though, because I've talked to some Democrats and they say Ohio's still a purple state. That's the sentiment they have. But
Yeah,
both of Ohio's Senate seats turned red this past
they
election.
did.
Is that
They
reversed?
did. And to counter that, we need to have a very strong candidate, and we have to do our job to make sure this becomes similar to the midterm of 18 and the midterm of 06 when they had an unpopular Republican president. What happened in those two midterms? We won the Ohio Senate seat. So I do think, again, going back, if you had an Acton share a ticket, for example, which is clearly what Chuck Schumer was trying to make happen with that meeting, you have, I think, the strongest tickets since '06. You don't have a 24 cycle where, that Trump turnout was too much for Sherrod to overcome, but against a much weaker candidate like John Husted, who will have to spend the next year and a half answering for Medicaid cuts, food stamp SNAP cuts, tax breaks at the very high end, all the other damage being done, for example, to medical research at Toledo and Cincinnati and Ohio State. That's a good matchup. And again, the reason the DSCC and Chuck Schumer were here is to get to 51 seats, you've got to win a couple that are less expected. And I think on the list of potential pickups would be Ohio. And I don't think, again, if it was in the year where Trump was on the ballot, that may feel like a reach. But in a midterm year where we have won, in the midterm of the Republican White House, 1806, basically the last two times they've come up, I think Ohio is still a place where they better try to win, because if they don't win Ohio or Iowa or some state they don't expect to win, they will not get to 51 seats. So I think that Ohio Senate race, the reason that picture got out there, the reason that dinner happened, is it's pretty clear to me that they are really trying to convince Sherrod Brown to run for that race.
So what parts of Ohio does the Democratic Party need its turnout? Is it Wood County? Is it some of the suburbs of Cuyahoga County?
I mean, this is too simplistic, but It's everywhere. Ohio, as you said, it's purple. You win Ohio by big turnouts in our cities, which we have not had the last two elections. Swing counties like Wood County. If Wood County is blue, if Erie County is blue, if some of the others along the lake are blue, if Stark County is anywhere close to blue, you're going to win Ohio. And then we need to lose by less in rural Ohio. If you lose rural Ohio like Obama did, 60-40, you're probably winning Ohio. If you lose at 80-20, it doesn't matter how you do in those other places, you're probably going to lose. So I wish we were a state where there was one path. There's not. We need to do far better in cities. The turnouts in recent elections in Cleveland, Toledo, even Columbus and Cincinnati were off a little bit, especially for presidential. We have to do better there. That's Kathleen Clyde. She talked about this running for chair. Could not be more important for her to work with those communities. Marcy Kaptur won't win over time unless we do better in those communities as well. But then you've got to make inroads. And if Wood County is really red, you're probably not winning Ohio. But by the way, here's the good news. We have seen it gets hidden a little bit by the Trump turnout in the presidential year. But one path to turning Ohio blue is if you study closely 2023, the two issue one campaigns. You saw counties that used to be very Republican reject that. Remember the August issue one that was going to make
the country was surprised by that.
Yeah, and if you look at the map of Ohio, you start to see. Wait a second. There are voters in Warren County, which used to be the heart of the Republican Party coalition. They didn't like issue one, and I think they were almost 50-50 on the November issue one for reproductive rights. Butler County, again, big Republican county past, looking better. So and this is why I think, again, going back to the Amy Acton campaign, I think her candidacy is so strong, is these collar counties, the suburbs of our big cities that were the heart of the Republican Party not long ago, look like they're not as into the far right stuff as everybody else. And you saw that shift, and it was a key part of why you saw wins in 2023. And a lot of that is women voters. And you even saw, even though Sherrod couldn't hang on because of the Trump turnout, he actually made inroads even in those counties. Delaware County is another example. Fairfield and Union around Franklin County. All of these counties, you start to see, Geauga County voted against the issue one in August. That's a very Republican county. Greene County voted against issue one in August, November. So it tells you that there's some cross pressure in some of these counties, and I think that's something. If I were running for governor, I'd pay very close, or senator, very close attention to that. There is some hidden growth. It gets lost when Trump's on the ballot, but when he wasn't on the ballot, you see these inroads being made. And if you have in a 2026 cycle, if Warren County and Butler County and Delaware County are anywhere close to 50-50, let's say 55-45 Republican, all of a sudden it makes it very hard. It'd be like saying that Cuyahoga was going to be 55-45. You're taking away margins in the counties where they're supposed to do best. And that's what happened in November 23. And I think that actually is one of the reasons why having a good balanced ticket with a woman on the top of the ticket, everyone knows like Sherrod, all of a sudden I think that gives you the opportunity to take some of their traditionally best counties and have them be much closer or blue. And that's, again, how you win Ohio. But bottom line, I know that's a long answer. You really, in Ohio, you have to overperform across the board, or the math does not add up.
We talked a little bit about the House, and I think that's where I want to go next, because you mentioned Representative Marcy Kaptur, who's in a very tight district, as seen in November 2024. Was that just the economic headwinds and the Trump effect, or is there some serious concern that she may not win re-election again because of the demographics of that district and then some of those concerns folks had?
My biggest concern is that they're going to make the district even worse. They are, not to get too partisan on your show, but they all told us that last November, vote no to end gerrymandering, right? That was sort of the vote no campaign. Well, right now, the same people told us that are in a backroom gerrymandering. And who are they trying to eliminate? Marcy Kaptur, and Amelia Sykes. And Mike Johnson in Washington is all in on that same plan. I think if Marcy was able to hold on in the Trump year, my assumption would be the midterm where Trump's not on the ballot, where they've done all these terrible things on Medicaid and budgets and SNAP and everything else, and I think the economy is turning south. I would think Marcy would do better in 26 than she did in 24, which is why they're going to try and make the district harder for her to win, because I think they know that as much as I do. The other worry longer term, and I know there's some great Democrat friends of mine in your area, but it's kind of fair to argue that this district will be much tougher to defend when it's not Marcy Kaptur running. She's so strong. She's such sort of a legend politically. I've been to fairs and festivals with Marcy Kaptur. It's like nothing I've ever seen. You've seen, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
There's a line of 100 people. They're mainly just thanking her because of all the ways that she's helped people over the years on particular issues. So she's kind of so strong that she's been able. I'm sure Republicans in Washington thought, "Oh yeah, she can't win. We ruined her district," and she keeps winning.
Could you see how that could maybe also play against her? Because we see in some areas there's a rejection of Democrats who've held office for a long time.
That can happen, but I think, and again, when I was a candidate and I saw it, I think her constituent service work and her consistency of who she is. No, nobody in Ohio cares more about Ohio or Northwest Ohio than Marcy Kaptur, and you can feel it in 5 minutes of talking to her. And she knows everything about everything that matters there and in Ohio. And so I think the length of her service, given that she's been working the entire time, is why she's holding on. I think it's because she's personally touched so many people. Whatever the districts has looked like, she's accumulated credibility and a record of service that's allowed her to hold on to a district that I think newer Democrats maybe would have not held on to. And Mike, that's kind of her secret sauce. And I think that, they're going to try and make the district harder, but I would never count her out because she's hung on in tough districts. And it's because of the service her office has done that's kept her in there. But yeah, I have no doubt in a few months you're going to see maps that try and make it even harder for her. But I also, if you bet against Marcy Kaptur, you're probably going to lose money.
It won't even just be the redistricting that'll be an uphill battle, but also the infusion of outside money. I mean, we saw in November 2024, lots of money was poured in by both sides because this district is really a battleground for control of the House. Is there a chance that there will be more money in this next round of elections?
Yeah, I mean, I think there will be. It's interesting. It's hard to predict, but the answer about will there be a lot of money, sadly, is always yes. Far more than there should be, usually more than the last time. I will say it is interesting, and I do not like what anything Elon Musk has done, but to the extent that he's now promising primaries against people who are supporting of this budget, maybe there's a shakeup on their side for once. And so maybe there's a lot of money and it's all billionaire, dark money. It's all bad. But if there's some sort of civil war on their side about this terrible bill, and it's, again, I'm against it for a lot of reasons. Clearly, Musk is against it because of the deficit exploding. Maybe that complicates the scene a little bit in a way that helps someone like Marcy Kaptur get through. I mean, I hate to say it. I hope that Elon Musk looks at John Huston and said, "Hey, he voted for this bill. I'm going to primary him." Good. I mean, I'm all for it. So maybe it's more complicated, but yeah, if you're in a swing district like Marcy Kaptur and Greg Landsman, where I live in Cincinnati, or Amelia Sykes, they know that a lot of money will come their way. But on the good side, these are strong enough candidates. I mean, Amelia, just like Marcy Kaptur's wins, Amelia Sykes's wins have been incredible. She also was someone in a district that I think Republicans thought, oh, that's the end of that Democratic district. We'll beat Amelia Sykes. And she's won impressively every time, surprising both Democrats and Republicans. So the good news for us is in the seats that are the ones they're most likely to mess with, we have very strong candidates who've come through this in the past.
You hear a lot of Democrats have this enthusiasm that they expect there to be this 2018 style blue wave. The economic situation is different because obviously you're coming through this inflation environment where people went through a lot. In 2024, we saw a lot of areas of the country, they went to the right. Can that be
Right.
reversed after this bill passes? Because there seems to be a lot of enthusiasm that it can be.
The history is good for this, but you can't take anything for granted. So I don't. I think that the Democrats make a mistake if they think it's just going to happen. That's not how life works. I think Democrats need to be very much on offense. Let's run against everybody who voted for any of this stuff. And let's be very disciplined on messaging so that every voter in Ohio knows that the Republicans in Congress voted to strip away their Medicaid, voted to strip away SNAP benefits. There's a lot of food need in Ohio, in all these districts. Are part of, have done nothing to stop the attacks on NIH that are really hurting universities and communities around universities and the billions in research that they do collectively. So I think the opportunity is there, but I think Democrats, from the party to candidates, federal and state, to the new caucus leaders, need to be very aggressive, very clear, very disciplined about how everyday Ohioans are really being held back and squeezed by policies that I can tell you will be a failure. One little thing, by the way, we saw a dress rehearsal of the policies back when in Trump's first term. And you may remember this. I think Trump visited Toledo in January of 2020. You probably were out there reporting on it.
Yeah.
Well, I was there too. And what was I saying in January of 2020? Ohio had lost jobs for the first year since the Great Recession in the year 2019 from January. Not because of COVID, but because of this chaotic tariff stuff he does and because of trickle-down economics. So in his first term, we've seen this program before. It doesn't end well for workers. It doesn't end well for everyday Americans. We had that decline in the economy in 19, and I think we're about to see it again. And I never forget, I think the Democrats made a big mistake in the election of 24. They let Trump convince everyone that the economy was great in his first term.
I just wonder if you can put this into perspective as someone who's been a party chair for Democrats in a very difficult battleground state going into 2026. What should be the main talking points? If maybe you had 2 or 3 points that you would tell national Democrats, given your experience in Ohio, what should they be focusing on?
I think coming out of this budget, you and I are talking on a day where the jobs report just showed a loss of jobs. A recent report, I think, showed a loss of GDP growth. And I think the tariffs, the budget bill is going to spike energy costs short and long term. I think the effects on everyday people from budget bills and these other trickle-down policies, both state and national, are going to be very clearly felt. And I think Democrats' main job is to make sure that we connect the dots, that you are feeling this because they voted for this. It's not, they like to blame it on all sorts of other issues. The reason why jobs are going down, the reason why deficit's going up, and I think these will be the facts on the ground next year, just like it was in Toledo in 2020. The facts will be clear. Everyday people feel the price, and I think it needs to be very clear that it's because John Husted voted for it. It's because different members of Congress or Vivek Ramaswamy supports that, which he's clearly part of all this. I think that just connecting the dots. And don't get distracted by every debate in the world. Make sure everyday Americans, everyday Ohioans understand the reason things are more expensive and the reason why things aren't going as well as they like in their lives is because of trickle-down failed policies that have never worked when Trump tried the first time. And I think this time will actually be even more sort of painfully felt as not working. So that'd be the heart of it. And that would be a combination of health care, health insurance, costs, jobs. I'd also connect it, though, to the fact that billionaires have basically taken over our government. The reason why they are pushing for these tax cuts to the top that force everything else to be cut is because billionaires are running the show. Whether it was Elon Musk with Doge, whether it's Vivek Ramaswamy, whether it's like 8 cabinet members that Trump picked, whether it's Trump himself, they're running our government. They're running our country, not indirectly, but directly. And so everyday people, whatever party, I think should want to fight back against that. And that ties also into going back to Ohio. the corruption that really is, there's never been any reform since First Energy. Most of the people involved, except for a couple, are still in office. And I think tying back some of these things, the reason why you're paying more, the reason why we're not succeeding economic, Ohio, our GDP growth recently is 45th in the country, despite all the tax breaks, despite all the giveaways. We're 45th. Why is that? Why are we not working well? Because everything's corrupted in Columbus. It's not about public service. It's not about a real strategy to lift people, lift the economy. So everyday Ohioans are paying the price for failed policies, sort of billionaires running everything, and the fact that so much of Ohio at this point, I mean, you know this, there are currently 2 HBO documentaries about how screwed up Ohio is. There's no other state, I think, where there's one. It would be nice if our state house budget got a little bit back from all the giveaways that are coming out of this very pay-to-play culture that has held back Ohio for years. This is not just a last couple years thing. First Energy was only the latest example. The place is run on pay-to-play, and by every single measure, be it population decline or static population, be it education outcomes, be it the sky-high student debt Ohioans feel, 45th in GDP, health outcomes. This state is failing by every measure. And I think 26, I think if done right, is the opportunity to finally show that and to make the people who've been in power all these decades finally, frankly, pay the price that what they've tried has simply not worked. It's failing the state. We need to try something different.
David Pepper, thanks for coming on and offering your perspective.
Wonderful. Hey, great to see you again.